All right, we're gonna see if we can continue putting the transmission back in. I think I worked out some troubleshooting tips from yesterday with my new camera setup. We're gonna hope that the boom mic is working this time because it was just using the camera mic and you guys weren't hearing a lot of what I was saying. I was talking a little too hush hush. I was just super exhausted, guys. Just a lot of hours this week and pushing hard and not getting the proper rest that I need. It's kind of one of the disadvantages on the flag system is you don't get paid until the job is done. And if you got setbacks, those are problems that you, the technician, have to figure out in order to get the job done. And if that means you work an extra hour, then you work an extra hour. If it means you come in on your day off, like today, which is Saturday, you're doing it because you gotta put the bread on the table for the family. So our live stream hasn't crashed yet, and that's very, very good. We were crashing within seconds before. Um, Hopefully the network stays stable. I'm going to log into our chat. All right, chat is up. I got one person in here. That's fantastic. Glad to see you. And I'm going to do a mic check really quick on the confidence and see how it's coming out. So do a little tap, tap, tap. See if this mic is active. See what happens. All right. We're working on that mic. That's good. Let's get to work. Let's make some money. So I got bills to pay. Where did we leave off? Oh, yes. Okay, so we got our chain pump fixed. We got it installed. I got that O-ring already put in that was missing from yesterday. Got a good feeling about today. We're not going to have any more setbacks like we did with those spark plugs. It was total amateur hour on those spark plugs. I can't believe it took so long. We got the transmission out faster than we did that tune-up, which was quite embarrassing. I mean, that tune-up should have taken all of 40 minutes tops. We're going to go for a little ride. I'm pretty sure all the batteries on the lights are dead, but we're not working in the dark anymore, so not a big deal. I got plenty of good natural sunlight coming in. Let's put you on your home so you can follow along. I'm going to be checking into the chat every now and then, so if you got questions, go ahead and say something. I'll stop and answer them. We're using the YouTube live stream. We're not using StreamYard, so I won't be able to put people's questions up on the screen. I'll just read them off out loud, so pay attention. What's our angle at? Is that a good angle? Yeah, you guys can see just fine, just fine. Cleaned out the bell housing area. Very important that we clean out all the mess. Last thing we want is somebody else saying, hey, you got a trans pump leak at another shop when we just did it. You know, it just makes your shop look bad. So clean up the mess. If it's a big mess, we'll put it in the bill and explain it to the customer. Hey, by the way, I'm charging you an extra hour of labor. I got to clean up all that grease, all that snot, everything from whatever leaked and make it right. You know what I'm saying? You know, don't go crazy. Don't be like, I need $400 to clean it up. That's just ridiculous. Now that's what pressure washers are for. I have a little Harbor Freight $50 electric pressure washer. I'll hook it up to a line. I'll push the chassis outside and I'll hose off this area if it's that bad. Get creative in it. All right, brake cleaner's not going to wash everything off, so you might have to get your blue rags and your red rags and wipe out the big stuff and then blow it all off. And I can bring up a perfect example of that. A gentleman paid for an entire engine overhaul at another garage. Then he brought it to us for an oil change because he was told get an oil change within 500 miles after your new engine. And it looked like Leak City. Like the heads were trash, the chassis was full of oil, the engine barrier was full of oil, and I brought the customer in. I says, dude, I thought you told me you got a brand new engine in. He's like, I did. I says, either something's leaking on this new engine or they didn't clean up their mess. So, I said, I'll change your oil, but you should have a talk with the other shop and talk to them. So he took it back to that store where he got it from, and they had to clean all that mess up. That's just kind of an embarrassment to come back on your garage, is not to clean up your mess. Always do your work as if another garage was going to look at it. You don't want that embarrassment on your name, because now that customer's never going to go back. Let's get some safety gloves on this time. Oh, we got some folks in the chat. Let's see who's here. Garage Monkey. Oh, dude, did you become a subscribe? Oh, you're a member now. Dude, good for you. You got your donut. Thanks for becoming a member, Garage Monkey. Big thanks. Hands-on Mechanical, good to see you here too. 4 people in the party. That's really, really good to see. All right, so this stayed here overnight. It was secure. I'm going to double check and make sure my strap feels good, because we're going to put this big old 35-pound torque converter counterweight on here, and it's going to add a little bit of tipsy-to it. Again, if you're shy of doing this, just get somebody to hold the transmission for you. Now we do have to line up some features here. We got 3 points where we have to engage on this main shaft. All right, we got our main, and I might speak wrong. Okay, if I speak wrong, I'll correct it later on. I'm kind of going off the cuff here. I don't have any field notes. But we got our main input right here, which is going to link directly to our torque converter. Okay, then we got our, I think this is our stator. This is our main alignment right here. And then deep in there where that chain pump cover was, we have these index marks. All right, so it's not going to slide on easy. We're going to have to do some spinning. And I got my catch because we're going to leak oil. I did charge the torque converter up with some oil. Okay, I got one. And we don't want to push it. Yeah, some people do on these torque converter bolts right here where it engages on the engine side. They'll put some long bolts in there and they'll use that to hold it. That's a good trick. I did that in the beginning. No good. Gotta let this transmission tip forward just a little bit. Oh, there we go. We caught something. There it is. So the nose of my transmission was up too far, and it's a very, very, very tight clearance in there. So just like our engine and our transmission had to come out perpendicularly, same thing with this. This has to go in very true. Now I overlooked this yesterday, and that was my fault. Safety first, right? We got a torque converter locking tool here. This is a Subaru ST, but I guess I should pound one out flat and trace it out for you guys, because you could honestly replicate this with a Bud Light can. But all it's going to do is come onto the back here and keep that thing from wobbling out. Keep it in place. Where's my brake check gauge? Brake check gauge. Some of you are unsure if you got this thing in all the way, the torque converter we're talking about. If you're unsure, you can use these brake check gauges. They're like $10 on the Jungle site. That's Amazon. And they want to be about 3 to 5 millimeters, and that's perfect. This one's 4 millimeters. It's dead on. It's great. I've actually kind of learned with my pocket screwdriver. That's where it needs to be. Oh, we lost this much fluid, and that's fluid that has to go back in. I got some fresh fluid. We'll get it charged up when we get the transmission in, because you want to refill these transmissions just like an automatic transmission. They don't have a dipstick. They have it's called a fill and spill plug. To our consumers, our DIYers that are very angry there's no dipstick in here, well, there's a lot of reasons why that got taken out. One of them was because of people who didn't know what they were doing. Both mechanics and DIYers were putting fluids in there that shouldn't have gone in there. So manufacturers just said, you don't get a dipstick anymore. And right on the back here, yeah, you can see it. There's a 10 millimeter X. You'll pull that out. If nothing comes out, go ahead and fill it up till it spills out. Then you put the plug in. Then you'll turn the car on for a second, check it again, and then once you get it filled all the way up on that point, then you can let the car run, and the oil pump and the transmission will get everything flowing through here, charge up the torque converter, charge up the variators with fluid. Then you can top it off one more time. We warm everything up to about 105 degrees frickin' height, and you'll check that plug one more time. So a lot of steps there. I'll always tell you that whenever you're working on something, whether it's routine or new, you should always have some sort of service data available. There's a lot of really good service data websites where you can just buy a 1-day or a 3-day or a 1-week subscription. You don't have to get these multi-$1,000 yearly subscriptions. Obviously, some of them, like the Snap-on, you got to pay a monthly. They don't have a daily rate. But MotoLogic, I recommend them. They're very DIY friendly. You're getting dealer source information, and you can get it on a 3-day lease, and that'll get you access to everything: wiring diagrams, fluids, R&R procedures, diagnostic procedures, trouble codes, you name it. So when I do work on vehicles that are non-Subaru, uh, we'll just get that temporary subscription so we can work on the car. Don't dilly-dally, you only get 3 days. Did I mention that I really, really like this transmission jack? It's made by Sonix. It's got foot controls so we can lift it up really quickly halfway and we can lower it down. Then the last about 20 inches is going to be through this hydraulic pump over here. We used to have the OTC one and I fought to get that thing out of here because the OTC one doesn't go as high. And if you're like 6 foot tall like me, it was unbearable getting transmissions out. Because I actually had to have the car lowered about 3 inches so I could work under it, and I'd have to crunch down like this, hurt my back like crazy. So I was really, really happy when that transmission jack finally blew a piston. And of course, OTC, they do have warranty on some stuff, but trying to get parts to fix their stuff, horribly long, and we didn't want to wait. So I called the tool truck guy, Mac Tools. He's one of our fantastic vendors. He's on time with everything, and he's like, I got two in the warehouse. And I was like, great. We bought two of them. Our guys love them to pieces, and we're actually getting transmissions out faster. He even threw in the gas tank adapter for this, which was great because we had a designated piece of equipment for dropping gas tanks. So now we can take this. I call it a tabletop. So we can take this tabletop off and we can put different tabletops on it. The one thing that I'm really going to fight getting this transmission up in is going to be those oil lines that run across the top front of the bell housing. I got to make sure that they don't get caught on the chassis and get damaged. Secondly is I got to make sure that I don't crush them between the engine and the transmission. So if you see me reaching up top trying to do something, that's what I'm doing. I'm making sure my lines are secure. Could I have totally eliminated them out of the transmission? Yeah, I could have. But you know us mechanics, the less things we take off, the less post checks we have to do. And this Ascent has a rear AC system, so I got to make sure I don't have any problems with these rear AC lines as I'm going up. There's lots of things here to crash into. So we go up a little bit, we check our clearances, we make sure we're not rubbing, catching, because this jack is rated to lift like 2,000 pounds. It's gonna win. Whatever you put between it and a hard place, it's gonna win. Again, big safety note, when we're moving forward, we do not want to push on the transmission, okay, because the only thing holding the transmission to this tabletop are just these clamps here. And I have seen people push transmissions off the tabletop. It's just real easy because you're working with the weight up here. So when I want to go forward, I got to always remember to push somewhere on the jack instead, not here. Oh, like butter, guys. It just soaked it up. Okay, let me grab my safety nuts. The two bottom studs, I thread nuts on those. I'm not going to run them down just yet. I'll explain why in just a minute. So if my hands are representing anything, this is the transmission, this is the engine. I'm still like this, all right? This is the bottom, and I don't want to run those bottom clamps in and try and close it like this. I want to get everything clearly lined up. So I'm going to lift up a little bit more on the transmission and get my gap like this. Then I'm going to put in the highest possible bell housing bolt I can. I'm going to work around. I'm going to slowly close it all up. Doing this incorrectly, you can run that pilot that's on the torque converter, the nose. It's right now just kind of sitting just on the outside, and you can actually deform the back end of the crank, or you can push your crank forward on your engine and you can mess up your thrust bearing. I think I'm okay now to release the tension on my safety strap, because if I go any higher with the transmission, I'm not going to be able to retreat it. I once had to buy a new safety strap because I didn't do that, and it was pinched between the transmission and the engine, and I'd already got so many things bolted up, I just kind of went, not worth it, and I just cut it. She's hung up just a little bit on a harness plug. I haven't figured out why we were crashing so many times yesterday on the stream. But I do know that I do need a steady Wi-Fi. I can't run this on cell data with the new camera setup. So I just think that the Wi-Fi was just trash that day. Gonna raise my engine just a touch, tilt it back a little bit more. Always being aware that my lifting equipment, my stripper pole and my trans jack, they have a lot of force behind them, and they'll do some damage. Yeah, there's a lot of tension on those safety nuts right now. I'm gonna go ahead and get one bolt in and see how it feels. I also did a little bit of self-research on how I was feeling yesterday, because yesterday I felt like some hot trash, and that was probably related to why I was struggling a little bit. I normally wear a heart rate monitor because I was complaining about my fingers feeling weird, and I couldn't hold on to tools with my fingertips. I thought I was losing feeling in them, and I just related it with exhaustion. Monitor, and you didn't take it with you. And she made a comment that I could have had some elevated blood pressure. And elevated blood pressure, according to my dad, who's an RN, registered nurse, he's like, yeah, he says even somebody who doesn't have cardiovascular problems or is on heart any kind of medication, he says That's a common symptom. You got exhaustion, you got dehydration, and then you had an elevated heart rate. He says, yeah, your feet will start hurting. You'll get um, loss of sensation in your fingertips. Everything feels stiff and tight in your joints. And I was like, yep, that was me. Just working too much. And I'm not that much of an old guy. I think I'm only like 43 years old, but being a mechanic, that's really hard on your body. You work with a lot of weight over your head. You crush your spine. You bend in weird positions. There's a lot of sacrificial things that we do, especially with all the bumps and cuts, scrapes and bruises that we get on our body just from doing basic work. Your body has to heal, and it needs resources. And if it's using resources to keep you awake and keep you going, then it can't heal, and it's just compounding problems. So yeah, I think a lot of my yesterday problems were just stress, not enough rest, working too much. Most likely dehydration. I do keep a big 64-ounce bottle of water, and I was pissing like a racehorse all day because of it. But you know, if your body doesn't have the will to process that water, that'll do it. I normally don't condone impacting these bell housing bolts in, but I keep my air gun on the low setting, so I'm not going to ugga-dugga these things crazy. And I'm only using a 3/8 too. When you work with your tools long enough, you really learn their power limits and their max outs. Alright, stripper pulls out so I can go up some more with my transmission. I got to be very careful of my shifter cable. It can get pinched in there. We don't want to screw that up. Let's get our bracket underneath here so I can get this out of the way and work. My man, I'm sorry, I can't read your name. It's in a language I don't know. What is that? Ukrainian? Russian? I think that I recognize the lettering. I think it's Russian. If you got a nickname that I can use in English, I'll call you out in your nickname. Or if you can spell your real name in English for me, I'd like to know it. Give you that. I want to give you that much respect for hanging out with me, man. I don't want to keep calling you my man, because then everybody else is going to think I'm talking to them. I'm not. I want to address you as a person. Bolts, bolts, bolts. And one of the frustrating things, you take something apart in the middle of the night when you're tired. You got to remember where you set everything down. That's an important bolt. And I hope the audio is a lot more crisp. The headset that I am using is really, really good at cutting out the air tool noise. So that way, if you're listening with some headphones, I don't scare the crap out of you. And then I can talk a little bit more calmly. Because before I was using the camera mic and I would have to elevate my voice, and then people around me be like, "You saying something to me?" And I'd say, "No, no, no, man. I'm talking to my invisible friends." Then the better part of it is, these guys right now, they're blasting the hell out of some rap music. Again, I don't want to discourage their work. Music helps the express guys get the job done, so let them have it. But when YouTube picks up on any kind of music in the background, they turn my streams off. Or if they do allow the streams to go through, I get an angry letter. I think one stream that I did before I learned about all this monetization thing, I had like 20 violations because some dude had Pandora just ripping in the background. I never did find my locking lug nut kit. I'm gonna have to go shake down some people in the shop. I am 100% sure somebody thought it belonged to the shop and didn't realize it was mine, and my dumbass for not putting my name on it. No one's just ever come by and taken anything from me in a while. How's your view angle? You guys need some more elevation? Yeah, you do. You need to see what's going on. I did pick up in the last 6 months these really cool extensions from the cornhole truck. Part number CBE, no, Charlie Bravo Papa Echo Utel Papa. If you can catch that. But I have two sets of their 3/8 extension built-in swivels, and this one locks in and it locks out. Which has been great. Alright, so I hand threaded all those in first, got them started, then I knock them in. Because otherwise they won't line up correctly if you zap one or two of them down. And then when you try to zap them in with your Ugga Dugga, you'll break the bolt off in the unibody, and then your day sucks. The only way to fix a bolt that's buried in the unibody, well, you can cut the unibody and you can weld a new nut in, but then you got to seal that hole up. So I hope that your shop has a skilled welder. I'm not a skilled welder at all, guys. You should see my welds. They're really dirty. About as much as I know about welding is how to weld a nut onto a broken bolt so I can extract it. I've fixed a couple of farm gates, but I would never weld anything structural for somebody's life. There are the rivet nuts for that big rivet gun. I made the shop buy one of those. They work pretty good. But investing into that big rivet nut gun, that is an investment. They can run about $200 to $400 depending on the sizes that you need. And then you can never buy just the one rivet nut. You gotta buy like 30 of them at a time, and that's money too. There's something I'm missing. There it is. Put my shifter cable on. It does have a washer that goes on the outside and then a cotter pin. If you lose the washer or the cotter pin, any washer or cotter pin will work. Ask me how I know. Those things grow legs. The bracket that holds down the shift cable, it does have a mark for forward. You can hold the shift cable in the correct position. I didn't mention this yesterday. I don't have to put the transmission in neutral to remove it. You can just leave it in park, it's fine. Who we got in here? Okay, there we go. What we got? Volodymyr, Ukraine. Yeah, yeah. I picked up on your language because I've actually been studying it. I've been trying to learn your dialect of Russian because in Ukraine you guys have like honestly the best fabricators in the world. I mean like the fucking shit that you guys are doing to win a war with Russia right now with just fucking drones is amazing. But I actually learned a lot more about my transmissions on my Subarus through some of the Ukrainian YouTube channels that are out there because you guys fix everything. And if you can't get a part, you guys make it. It's so cool. I watched a video of one guy. He built a torque converter plasma. Okay, so he's rebuilding torque converters. He's putting new stators and he's putting new pistons inside the torque converter, but he needed a way to laser cut off the turbine because it's all welded together. And here in America, we just throw them away and we get new ones. We don't rebuild them. But his shop rebuilds them. So he took an old school tire changer, the kind that we use the chopsticks for to kind of get the tire off. So he puts the torque converter on there, and then he designed a CNC arm with a plasma cutter, and he just holds down the foot pedal, it turns the torque converter, and the plasma cutter goes bzzz. He knocks the top off, he washes it out, he puts a new piston, a new stator clutch in there. Same thing, he's got a CNC welder, bzzz, puts it back together. He's like, I'm done in 30 minutes. Like, so cool. But I'm watching all those channels with translators on, and it's not always very fluent. And then sometimes he shows his notes, and I can't read the notes. So I just downloaded one of the little iPhone apps, and I started like picking up on some keywords. And pretty much, if I got stuck in your country, I could ask for boiled eggs and where's the bathroom. But at least I'm recognizing the lettering. And I was really shocked at how fast I was kind of picking it up, playing around on the cell phone with the trainer app, because my mom, my mom's from Mexico, my dad's a hillbilly out of West Virginia. Both my sisters speak very fluent Spanish. I don't speak a lick of Spanish. I couldn't even ask for a bathroom in Spanish. And I took 3 years of Spanish in high school. I failed every time. I think I would have had a better success rate learning Spanish as a kid if I would have had all the cool learning tools that we have today. Like, today's learning tools are just amazing. And I'm not getting paid the talk about any of these translation apps. I just picked it all up on my own. Because I remember growing up and seeing commercials for the internet, and I was blown away. And then when the internet did come out, like I was getting kicked out of libraries because I just couldn't get off the internet. I was just fascinated that people would just put free information out there, which is ironic because I was in a library where for hundreds of years people have been putting information into a building. But somehow, for some reason, being on a computer and learning just was, I don't know, more acceptable for my brain. Okay, we're check, check, check. We're check, check, check. Check, check, check. That's good. We're good here. No problems there. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. All right, let's get the big floppy stick in now. Got our drive shaft bolts right here. They are keyed, and they got a split washer, which is the regular old nut. If one of these bolts walks away, can you just stick in any old bolt? Hell yeah, you could. Just grind off one edge. But I say this with confidence because I've gotten away with this. Make sure that you do that to the other three nuts. You're going to have to put in three aftermarket nuts and grind them, and you want to weigh them and make sure that they're within like a gram of each other, because you can throw, you can generate a vibration on the drive shaft, okay? You can throw the balance off just enough by using a different size nut that adds weight to a different spot. And those are our alignment marks from yesterday. And we had a really, really fun conversation a couple of months ago when I was working on a drive shaft, replacing one for a customer. A lot of people were under the assumption that all drive shafts are repairable. Unfortunately, no. Heavy-duty trucks, yes, they're definitely repairable. Light-duty vehicles, they are not repairable, and the reason is because where the cardan is, that's this universal joint right here. It's not a cardigan like a sweater, it's a cardan, like Dan owning a car. Well, that cardan is pinched in there. It's not welded, it's not epoxied. They just deform the metal around it. So you will just waste a whole lot of time trying to remove that cardan, and then there's no snap ring slot, so you can't just snap ring something in there. You're going to have to deform that joint again, and you could have just messed up the whole drive. It's just not worth it. Not as cheap as these things are. Like an OEM drive shaft for this Ascent is like $600, but an aftermarket one, probably from the same factory in Taiwan, 250. And for my customers, I always recommend the aftermarket option because they're not coming back. So when I find an aftermarket vendor that works on my cars, I'll recommend them to save my customers some money, so that way that they can invest more in preventative maintenances. Same thing goes with the center support, the carrier bearing. You can't fix that. It's all glued together. It's all tacked together. There's no bolts. There's no replacement bearing, and there is one. If you Google search really hard, there's one place that sells a kit to fix it. But dude, it's $500. Dude, just buy a new drive shaft. And it's not really fixing the problem either, because the solution is it tells you to cut off the old rubber bearing and then put this strip in there, wrap it, tack it shut. I'm like, dude, that is a horrible solution. I wouldn't even use that in the Mad Max universe. All right. And then these guys, snug plus a quarter turn. They got a torque on them, I'm sure, but snug and a quarter turn is working out great. And when you stick your pry bar, your screwdriver in there, make sure you don't dig up your cardan. I've seen people try and use pry bars like mine with that little tip, and they get it in there, and then that little flex, it pushes on that cardan, and it breaks it. I'm really digging our new camera setup. If you didn't catch what I was doing before with our camera, I was just using my iPhone camera. I could never see what's going on, so I spent money I didn't have, so to say, and I got me a GoPro. And it's a GoPro that Bluetooths to my little microphone here. And this microphone is amazing. I've owned the microphone already for like 2 years. It's made by a company called Aftershocks. I gotta think for a sec. Hang on. I'll get back to you. I don't want to put my exhaust on yet. We gotta get the starter on because I gotta tighten that bottom starter bolt from underneath. So we are going to just put this exhaust up temporarily so we can lower the car. So, all right. So anyhow, yes, I'm a big fan of the Aftershock Bluetooth equipment. They put the speakers here on your temple, so you hear everything through your jawbone. Now, if you're trying to listen to like some heavy bass, they're not really recommended for it. Some light listening music, yeah. Talking to people on the cell phone, amazing. And the great part is, I can still wear my hearing protection because the Apple earbuds is not really good hearing protection. Clear. And then this particular aftershock, is called the Open Calm, and while it does have some diminished battery life compared to the other aftershocks on the market, like the Sport Edition. I think the Sport Edition can go for like 16 hours. This one can only go for like 8 hours. But this one has a little built-in AI guy. So when I talk and there's like an impact going on behind me, it'll filter out that impact. I've been talking to people on the phone, and I'll ask them like, "Hey, did you hear me just put a tire on a car?" And they go, "Nope. Maybe a little bit, but nope." So that's how impressed I am with it. The manufacturer warranty on it, it's okay. It's 2 years, and I'm just gonna put this top starter bolt in while I'm talking to you. Trying to get it warranted through the manufacturer sucks, because you got to mail it in on your own dime, and then you end up waiting 6 weeks for them to just send you a new one, because they're not gonna fix this thing. They're just gonna send you a new one. Well, I didn't like that. So I got mine through the Best Buy. I think Best Buy's done a really good job with their warranty options. So for an extra $20, I know everyone's got a markup, but an extra 20 bucks, I have a two-year in-store replacement warranty. No questions asked. I just say it's not charging, and they're like, okay, here's another one. And if they can't get me the same exact model that I purchased, and they have a new model on the shelf, they're obligated to give me the new version. And if, let's say, this is completely discontinued, then they'll just give me my money back in store credit, and they'll say, pick something else. I've been okay with that. Working in the garage, I've warrantied out 2 of these in 4 years. And when you warranty out your product, they give you you have to buy another in-store replacement warranty to go with it. So basically, I've been paying 20 bucks to get a brand new headset. I remember a long time ago, people used and abused that policy when iPhone had, or when Apple had the iPods and the shuffles, because those things were jumping generations so fast. People would just go right back to the store 2 months after the new model came out, and they saw the old model got discontinued and the store stopped having it, and they're like, oh yeah, it don't work. Well, they had to honor the warranty. And those people got next generation iPods. I think that's just part of the risk that let me make sure our angle's good. There we go. I think that just comes with the territory of being a retailer. People do sketchy stuff. I mean, I've seen them do it to our vehicles. People try and get their car covered under a warranty because they say like, oh, it's not working right. I learned this is a true story. So I had a customer with a 2015 Forester, and they knew about the extended warranty on our CVT transmissions. Where's my water at? There it is. So they knew the. I gotta make sure I hydrate. I'll check chat. Okay, Volo. Maybe someone wears or others, but automotive here is dominated. Okay, so Volo says that you, in his area, automotive industry is dominated by Top Tool and King Tony. You know a guy who can grind CVT pulleys. That's awesome for rebuild. Dude, that's sick. Yeah, you guys, Volo says you're correct. You did jailbreak the John Deere tractor. A lot of farmers are very grateful for you. You're right, PPE is expensive. PPE is very, very important to pay attention to. All right, starters in. Starters plugged up. That's good. We're going to put some end links on here while I'm thinking about it. Try not to fall on my ass because I got CVT fluid all over the floor. Need to clean it up. I'm going to lay those on the ground where they came from because they are left and right side directional. And you can make the left side fit on the right side. You don't have to force it, it'll just fit. Then the car is going to come back clunking. And thankfully, the bags do label them left and right side. So if I didn't say it already, I want to thank you again for spending your Saturday with me. Thanks for keeping me company. Gets lonely underneath the car. And with the success of this new camera setup, I really do hope to get you involved into some more live stream heavy line, because what I'm learning is trying to record things and then go home and edit it and post it. It's very labor intensive, and I got to use that time to eat, sleep, and study. So I have about 6 hours of school a week. My ambition for the channel will be to eventually uh, have enough going to where I can get 2 or 3 cameras going at the same time, because there's software and a switchboard that I want to get. So I'll be able to set up like 6 cameras, and you guys as users can flip-flop between them. Now, obviously, that's a lot of electronics, and the boss man here probably won't condone that, and I'll have to find my own garage. But I really do want to get to that, where I can just set up a bunch of cameras, take stuff apart for y'all, put it together, answer questions, and do that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Because I honestly don't think I'm going to have the energy to do what I'm doing in 5 more years. Wrenching is tough on the body, and it takes longer and longer to recover from a heavy line job. This stuff is young man work and young lady work. So that's why I've been just going back to school, learning as much about engineering, theory of operation, really what makes these cars work and how they tick, so that way I can just retire my automotive career into diagnostics. So then I can just diagnose something and then give it to the young guy and say, put this on, do that. Check back in with me. So I worked at a Ford dealership, and there was I worked at a Ford dealership, and there was like 6 or 8 60-year-old dudes there. I'm like, really? And I see them every day, come in pain, leave in pain, and they just go home, sit in a recliner, and watch baseball all day because they can't move. I need my big Ugga Dugga for this axle nut. I wanted to start our stream a lot sooner today, and even though I came in on my day off, guess what they want me to do? Oh, we got a waiter. I'm like, I got a transmission, lady. Oh well, such is life. So I spent 4 hours this morning knocking out some waders. Nothing spectacular. Battery, fluid change, tires. But, you know, do what the boss man says. Stake my axle nuts. Always important. We don't have cotter pins, so they must be staked. And these pry screwdrivers by Mayhew, amazing. I love them to pieces. I think JD Tico has them on his website for like $60. Because I like that they have striking caps on them. I dropped a crap ton of tools in this car last night. I'm just going to make sure this car doesn't drive away with any of my sockets. That was all my fault yesterday. Alright, so we're plugged in. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. I can put this exhaust on now. And I need my exhaust gasket. I just had it, guys. F. Alright, slight intermission. I'm gonna go see the parts guy and go get me a new gasket. Alright, obviously last one. All right, we're back. We're back. Got to do a little light administration. You wouldn't believe how much administrative work technicians have at a dealership, especially when you're doing warranty. Every part that gets replaced under warranty, I got to file paperwork on. Then we have to use an electronic punch clock system, and I got to run time on every single repair. So this transmission job is paid under warranty. That's our new gasket number there, 44011AG001. Always get new exhaust gaskets every time we touch the exhaust. So this warranty job pays 5 labor hours. Which is why you hear a lot of technicians say warranty doesn't pay. Because the warranty company does not care if you took 3 hours or 8 hours to do the job. How's our chat? Okay, Volo asks, what are you studying? What is your end game in regards to videos? I will say that your work is very niche, and YouTube and other platforms are most about quick reactions. Okay, so yeah, my end game is I honestly want to have my own automotive studio. I want to get at least a 3 or 4 car garage. I want to have one of the stalls set up solely for studio work. I want to have a multi-camera system, and there is already software and a website that I would have to buy server space on. But I could start doing my video streams and start working, and then you guys, the end user, you could switch between left side camera, right side camera, bird's eye camera, or even my helmet camera. And I want to do that with light duty repair, heavy duty repair, diagnostics, and then also just start a school industry where I can start training up our new soon to become technicians, get them ready with all their fundamentals. I hope to eventually have some sort of third-party Subaru school, so you don't have to be a dealer tech to know the ins and outs of a Subaru. I'll walk you through all that. then hopefully I can catch up on my Ford and GM training too, and make some specialty Ford and GM classes. Because as I said earlier, it's online training for me has been a lifesaver. I retain information so much better when I can just relax at home and just watch somebody work. I mean, people say that you got to have so many labor hours of OJT, on the job training, so many hours of actually doing heavy line and working in a shop. But quite frankly, I entered into the automotive industry professional because I was just a hobbyist. I was a driveway guy who only worked on my car. I thought I knew things. I didn't know things, but I just jumped right out of the military straight into automotive, swept floors, changed oil, and then worked my way up to technician. I did that in 2015. 9 years later, 9 years later, ASC Masters, Subaru Senior Master. I've gotten a couple of Society of Automotive Engineering recognitions from SAE, and it's just because my mindset is never stop learning, never stop experiencing things. And then when people go, well, like, you've never worked on that before, how do you know how to work on a Mustang? Well, it's because I probably watched about 40 hours of video of other people working on Mustangs. Like when we had a used Mustang come in here that needed a new pinion. They were like, hey, we got to send this out, and they looked at the labor of sending it out, and they were like, Christ, we're just gonna send this car to auction. We can't afford to put a new pinion in this rear diff. And I'm like, guys, I can set up a rear diff. I got this. So right there, just opened up the case, pulled the drive shaft, nut out, put it in, put my paint marks on, got my backlash. Boom, we're done. Let's go. People think they need special training for things. You really don't. You just need to read the instructions, watch somebody do it a couple of times, and go, go, go. I'm going to leave my front tires off so I can work over the engine bay. You got me distracted for a sec. I got to check my work. We're good, we're good, we're tight, we're tight, we're tight. All right. Well, when I was doing all that online research for other manufacturers, Chrysler, Ford, Nissan, there wasn't any Subaru stuff. At least nothing worth learning from. It's mostly just people modifying cars. No, there was no troubleshooting, so I kind of found my thing. Subaru's not a complicated vehicle to work on. They really keep their technology simple. They're not trying to be an industry leader on anything. Well, I think they were pretty much an industry leader on ADAS with their eyesight system. I think Subaru really nailed it there. Everybody else in the ADAS world went with LiDAR technology. And Subaru is just using stereo cameras. We got two cameras that look forward onto the horizon. Now we have a third one, but I'll just refer to them as stereo for now. But they created a fantastic piece of software that's able to detect vehicles, people, children, motorcyclists, and its ability to react and respond and brake the vehicle, accelerate the vehicle, pace behind other vehicles. Because when you're in cruise control, it'll pace a car in front of you. So if you set your cruise control for, let's say, 70 miles an hour, and the car in front of you is doing 65, well, it's going to pace 65 miles an hour behind that car until that car goes faster. And if that car in front of you goes slower, it's going to um, make sure that you slow down. And it turns on the brake light, so it tells people behind you that you're braking when it starts slowing down for the car that it's pacing. It always maintains the proper braking distance of an object that you're following so that it can stop appropriately. Uh, I actually had the eyesight system about 6 years ago now. Saved my butt. I was on the interstate driving across Texas, doing about, I think about 75 miles an hour. Well, that was still too slow for somebody. And there was somebody in the left-hand lane. It's a two-lane road. He couldn't get around, so he decides to tear ass, go around me on the breakdown lane. Eyesight saw it in its peripheral vision, recognized it, alerted me, and before I could even put my foot on the brake, it took over the braking distance. So it slowed my car so I wouldn't clip his bumper because of course, he cuts me off, but then the car behind him panicked and they stopped too. So he stopped and I would have rear-ended that dude if I didn't have that technology. I'm very, very sure of it. And I haven't seen one recall come out on the eyesight system, which is amazing. We've made 3 versions of it in the United States now. And every single one of them has come out flawless. No recalls, no bulletins. I think about the only bulletin I've seen for eyesight is maybe tips for troubleshooting the calibration. That's about it. But it is a very, very good, robust system. I'll stand behind it and I'll stand in front of it because I know it's going to work. But if I tell you, here's a really good example of how Subaru likes to stay behind the curve of technology. Our vehicles didn't get Bluetooth until 2012 as as an option. Like it did not exist. No, I take it back. I think 2010 was the first year we had Bluetooth as an option, and then it became like standardized in like 2012 on only 2 vehicles. And then by about 2015, all the vehicles had it as a standard feature. I mean, shoot, in like 2009, an auxiliary port for an MP3 player was still an option. We just our manufacturer just doesn't get excited about things because they focus more on powertrain. It's all about let's get a customer a car that can go the distance, so to say. I'm sure there's a head gasket joke in there somewhere. I'll let you have it. So I will admit, our head gaskets on the EJ series from the late 90s were not that impressive. They had their leak problems. They had an external link problem. They didn't have a blow-by issue for drivability and overheating. They got better. The head gaskets on the EJs got better in 2001 when we finally switched over to a multi-layer steel gasket. Still had some problems. It was very, very prone to corrosion from, well, I guess you could call electrolysis some form of corrosion. But yeah, it was an electrolysis problem. Basically, what was killing the head gaskets in the early 2000s was tap water. The manufacturer was selling concentrate coolant for their vehicles, and it wasn't being cut correctly, and people were not using, at a bare minimum, distilled water. Like the proper water to cut your glycol-based coolant with would be deionized water, which has no electrical properties. Hey, what's up, bud? Yeah. All right. Let's go drop another car. All right, let's take 5. I'm gonna go help somebody out. We're gonna drop an engine. We back. Who's in here now? Hands-on Mechanical. Hey, welcome to the chat. My service manager did me a favor yesterday. Good for him. And had me use the flush flow machine to test a transmission oil cooler prior to installing a new transmission. Never had this machine. Yeah, those machines are lifesavers. We have automated machines for all the lubricants in our garage. Cuts so much labor time off. None of these, no more using the penis pump, I call it. Manager went to lunch, so I had to read the instructions how to use it. What seemed to be intimidating turned out to be pretty simple. There you go. Transcooler failed the flow test, so now there's more work. Bolo, haha, the 2014 Forester with regular radio and entertainment, regular radio and not an infotainment system. Looking back, infotainment on the 2014. Yeah, dude, that was when we were in the mid-teens. Subaru was partnered with Clarion, and the Clarion head units were just garbage out the gate. We had all kinds of problems with them. They were always coming in for software updates. Software updates would never resolve issues. People were always getting dropped calls with their Bluetooth. And I theorized, my working theory on it was that the cell phone industry at the time was booming, because you got to remember, like, the iPhone was just now starting to get, it was popular, but it was getting on other networks. So it was on Verizon, it was on AT&T. I think the iPhone at the time was on version 3s, and it was getting cheaper. Then Android was stepping up its game and making its own smartphones. And what had happened was basically the cell phone, in my theory, the cell phone technology had just put a bolt where it doesn't need to go. The cell phone industry had grown faster than the radio could handle, so there was always compatibility issues. And whenever you get a contract, when a manufacturer gets a contract for a radio head from somebody, they build into the contract support for it. That support comes in the form of radio updates, and you determine how many radio updates a year you want. So I really don't think that they anticipated that radio platform just needing so many radio updates to stay compatible with the phones on the market. You know, one a year wasn't going to cut it. So I was really, really happy when we transitioned away from Clarion and we went back to Denso head units. They were more expensive, of course, but they held up better. And our head units have been getting better since then. They've been more rugged. The touchscreens have been better. Software updates on the new cars, the ones that look like big Tesla screens, they kind of look like tablet screens. The end user now can upgrade those on their own Wi-Fi. They don't need to come into a dealership, and that's what I'm really happy about. Because I honestly think that the consumer should be able to do their own software updates for their radio system at their private residence. They shouldn't have to go to a garage and pay a service fee. My ratchet just switched to reverse. Because if you think about when it comes to the updates, I know the manufacturer's kind of worried that people are going to install the updates incorrectly, but you know, we've had personal computers that have been doing free Windows updates for decades, and they've never had problems. So I think it's eventually going to happen where the consumer is going to be able to get notification that their vehicle needs to have a update done on their engine computer. They're going to get a notification, and they're going to be given instructions to start their car and download a file. And so on and so forth. You would be astonished at the amount of vehicles that can be repaired on these late model vehicles with just a software update. Got a cold start drivability issue? Most likely needs a software update. Shoot, we had a software update at GM for a misfire. Oh, this is gonna hurt. I got ahead of myself with the starter motor. So now I don't have a clever way to spin the torque converter and line up my bolts. Boo. I thought somebody was watching me. I guess not. Somebody should have yelled out like, "Hey, you don't know what you're doing there, buddy." It's alright, I'll just cut my knuckles. I think there's enough room for me to spin this torque converter around. And then I'm going to use my pick to find the bolt hole. If my hands aren't so slippery. Otherwise, I got to remove my starter. There we go. And the metal on that flex plate is just razor sharp. I did this once before, and my finger slipped, and it went between the flex plate and the torque converter. I thought I lost my finger. I ended up just losing all the skin off the knuckle. Whoops. So I just grew a new knuckle, I guess. You guys are bugging me. Go away. My pick is just in the way. Ooh. Okay, lucky me. Let me get a light. I think I can do this with a flashlight. Yes. Yes. pick is just good enough to grab the teeth on that torque converter. I still can't really see. So. Yes, the mirror works just great. Work greater if you could see, but tough skittles. Mirror's dirty. Turning this thing over about 2 degrees at a time, but it's turning. Anything to not go backwards, I say. Oh, 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 oh. And we got a bolt hole. Nice. How's chat? Bolo says he doesn't like the new AC controls on the Subarus. I will agree. I'm not a fan of that touchscreen to control your ACs, though I am still happy that they left the hot and cold buttons as tactile buttons on the side of the screen. And at least they didn't go full Ford, because on the Fords, everything's touchscreen, and I hate it. That's why I only drive old-ass Subarus, because everything is still knobs and switches. I'm just one of those people now. Dislikes old things. My wife's got the new 2023. No, she's got a 2024 Crosstrek. She's in love with it. She doesn't mind all the little touchscreen controls. But I will tell you, this was what the engineer team, the design team, and the engineer team was thinking. This was their mindset when they integrated the HVAC controls into the touchscreen. And that is, they want you to leave it an auto, okay? They want you to push the auto button, and then they want you to set the temperature on the side with the tactile switches. And then the auto is going to switch the vent controls automatically for you. That was their reasoning behind it. But unfortunately, they didn't push that message to the consumer. Because I still have a lot of people who are just really upset because they say, you know, I'm driving, and then the AC stops blowing out of the vents. And I look at their car and I go, okay, well, you're on auto, and the outside temperature changed, and your climate settings changed, so the vehicle did what it was programmed to do, and it shifted the air to a different vent because it wants to cool you off a different way. Or, in this matter, it was a really humid day, and I explained, I says, you had auto HVAC control on, and the vehicle sensed that the humidity outside was going up, and there was an escalated temperature difference between your cabin, which was super cold, and your outside, and your vehicle didn't want your front windshield to fog up, so it automatically turns your defrogger on. really blew that person's mind. And after they kind of went through the shock and awe of like, wow, I can't believe my car can do that, they were like, well, that's just still so stupid. I want to manually control everything. Okay, cool. Then go buy a 10-year-old car. You can manual control whatever you want, but I guarantee you'll be coming crawling back when you want your Bluetooth and your satellite radio and all your other creature features. You just gotta, with newer cars, we just gotta give those things up and let technology do its thing. I mean, if you look at how we don't even have analog gauges in our car anymore. Well, they look analog, but they're not true analog gauges anymore. Um, our our gauge clusters, even if you have little needles, they're sweeping. They're not running on AC anymore. They're running on DC. And we really quickly got rid of all the AC circuits, excluding hybrids. Let's obviously we're not going to compare this to any type of a hybrid or EV car, but we've eliminated a ton of AC circuits out of the vehicle, if not eradicated them. By doing so, we've allowed our alternator to leak a little bit more AC than it normally does. Because in the 80s and the 90s, if your alternator voltage regulator, your bridge rectifier, your voltage regulator on your alternator, if it started going out and you started getting AC leaking through, everything on your car would just go wacky because your analog gauge cluster was AC driven. Your speed sensors on your wheels, that was all AC signals. So all those signals became contaminated by that AC signal that was leaking out of your alternator. Now, now the vehicle doesn't care if you got a little bit of AC coming in. I think I remember back from reading, um, the maximum allowed AC voltage that was allowed to leak out of the alternator was like 300 milliamps. Now you got cars that are allowing 700 milliamps to come through. And of course, the 12-volt car battery acts as a magnificent sponge to filter out that stuff. But on our old cars, on our ignition systems, our injectors, wheel speed sensors, gauge clusters, fuel tank leveler, the fuel filler gauge, all that was AC signal. That goes there. Grab it. If you were with me for a couple live streams ago, we pulled an engine together. I showed you guys one of my graphing meters. Well, not really a graphing. It's a oscilloscope. I used a pressure transducer to graph out the compression waveform of an engine that I pulled. Not because I needed to, but mainly because I was super curious about what the before and afters would be after I rebuilt the engine. To kind of show if I made significant improvement. That's really what I want. Well, there was a questionable spot on that waveform as I looked at the exhaust cycle of it, and I sent it in for peer review. There's a couple of other people that I talked to offline that are much smarter than me because they've been using this technology for over 10 years now. And they teach it, they're very proficient in it. And I hope to get a reply from them. Because I made a best guess of what was going on. So I'm hoping to get confirmation that I was making the right. I guess the word I want to use is I deduced. Prove my theory. Just have proof of concept. This car is not getting a battery. Okay. Good, 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 and good. Put my special tool away. Make sure I put my special tool away in the drawer that it goes in. And we're ready for the intercooler. Fix this spring really quick. There we go. All right, now it'll snap into there. It's one upgrade that I really do like. I do really enjoy those new snap spring fittings versus what they were, which was just collapsing hoses with worm gears. And is this in the right spot? Yeah, there we go. One, two, and three of these. It's 211. Still got to put those chemicals in. Volo says, by the way, a Bluetooth thing is happening on my unit also. It's always in the first 10 minutes of start, sometimes in 3. Hmm. Hey, not a problem. What year and model is your Subaru, Volo? Good, that works. Please close. Thank you. Hey, nope. Maybe a year ago I asked for stuff like that. Well, he's old. Guy brings me a box of packing peanuts. What am I going to do with a box of packing peanuts? All right. Check our engine oil level. We got engine oil. All right. Whew. All right. What do we got for time right now? Okay, I got 2:18. Okay, I'll hang out with you for a second. Okay, you got a 2014 2.5i Forester. Alrighty then. Um, yeah. Send me an email, and I'll talk to you offline about how to troubleshoot that. All right. My email is on my channel page in the about section. Just remind me what car you have and what we were talking about, and I'll walk you through some troubleshooting steps that you can do at your house to get that thing up and rolling. What I'm going to do right now, what do I want to do? We got to change this engine oil. That's what we got to do, Joe. So now that we have our transmission done, we got to finish up the rest of the services on this vehicle. We got differential fluid change. We got engine oil change. I think that's all that's left. Brake flush. Brake flush. So we should have this thing. Ugh, God, me. I can Hercules put this on. We should have this vehicle rocking and rolling within an hour. Of what's going on. Let's get you looking at here. Pay attention. So I've kind of developed this out of my own observation, but when I do oil changes for people, I always look at the inside of their oil filler, and I look to see if there's oil that's been burnt up in there and cakey. This little bit of varnishing, not too worried about it, especially if it wipes off. If it wipes out, then it's okay. But if it's sticky, that's bad. That means that you've been running your oil too long, or you've been putting inferior oil in there, or just you're not doing oil change intervals well. And then I smell it. It should not smell like burnt diesel. So that smells like just normal old oil. What I'm going to do right now, what I'm going to do right now is I got to take a 10-minute break. I'll be right back. So we're going to take an intermission. Just intermission. No smoke break. I got to the shop is going to close in about 30 minutes, and I got to fill out paperwork on this vehicle because we're going to be staying after work hours, and I want to get paid on it. Welcome back, folks. Thank you for being patient with me and waiting while I took care of some business. You guys have been a terrific audience. I want to thank you. Whew. Okay. Let me see here. Battery cable, battery cable. Oh, this one. Yeah. Yeah. We only got about 4 hours of camera battery life, so I'm pulling you in the charger. So you got to hang out here on the tabletop for just all this oil change service. I'll, if there's something important, I'll bring you up. If you got a question, just say something. I'll bring you in and show you what's going on. Okay, Volo says too much oil on the dipstick. Hey, not so fast there, amigo. Let me go ahead and explain that one. This engine hasn't started in about a day. So all the oil has dripped out of the heads and is now sitting in the oil pan. The, the proper way to inspect oil on the Subarus is one, you make sure you got oil in the car first. So make sure you got oil on the stick at least. Then we start it for about 30 seconds, get the oil pumping through all the components, shut the engine off, and then we re-inspect the level on the dipstick because the dipstick is a reading for operational conditions, and we can't check oil level while the engine's on because there's too much splash in the pan. It'll give us a misread. So that's why we turn the engine on, we turn the engine off, and then within about 30 seconds, you want to come over and you want to look at your dipstick, and that'll be the accurate way to read the dipstick. So that's why we look like we're about a quart heavy, is just because we have all that drainage. Safety, 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 check. But glad you brought that up. That's a very important thing to know. And that applies to all our engines. Check and check. Get this off. Just gonna go get a brake flush machine. I gotta clean my stall up. It is messy. Last night I didn't even bother putting any tools away. I just left everything on the ground. I was just exhausted. I hate those days. I don't like leaving my stuff out. Every once in a while you just get one of those days where you just look at everything you did and you're like, nope. All right. So this is our brake flush machine. It is a BG machine. This one is pneumatic. Somebody didn't safety the equipment before I used it. All these service machines, I always put all the settings back to zero because you never know. The guys, they get bored in the shop. They see knobs, buttons, and switches. They stand around this thing like it's the water cooler. They start turning things and hitting things. So I never trust the setting that the last person had it at. The brake fluid that we're putting into this system is going to be a .4 fluid. We're going to put a whole quart through it. Yeah. Oh, bummer. Oh, okay. Not trying to be rude to the guy, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to be in my film. So I don't. I do everything I can to keep my coworkers out of the camera because I don't. Just out of respect, I don't want to film them. I think it's rude to have them in the background. You put 12 psi on this. No leaks. We're good to go up. I'm glad I got the microphone today because this machine is very noisy. The camera speaker would be picking this up all day. We're going to take our protective boots off the brake bleeders. Keep mine right there by the controls so I remember to put them back. And I have a huge mess here. Need to put some tools away so I can find some other tools. Alright, so we're going to let that machine run. And what?
Were you able to throw out that pan by the toilet?
Oh yeah, here. It's all done. Alright, so we got marks on here for how much we want to flush the system through. We're going to go all the way down here to 1 for just the first caliper. Traditionally, we would suck fluid out of the brake fluid reservoir, but unfortunately, this reservoir has baffles in it, and you can only suck out like maybe 10% of it. So we're just going to push it all the way through. I didn't see any contamination in the bowl, so I wasn't really too worried about it. If the bowl did have a lot of discoloring to it and it was contaminated, then I would do my best to suck as much fluid out of there so I'm not pushing trash through the brake lines and into the caliper. But that's why half the service is going through that one caliper right now, because we're flushing out the bowl. On the old brake boosters, we did have access to all the fluid in the bowl from the top, and we were able to siphon it all out. Our diff plug, pretty easy to get to. It's a gigantic T70. Mac Tools sells a T70, part number Victor Tango Lima 70. It's extra long, that's what I like about it. Keeps my hands down here where my shoulders are at so I can get a better lean into it, instead of up here. When it breaks, then I punch the pan and cut my knuckles up. Now, on all your differentials in your transmission, you're going to see some, I call this smooth. This is fine as long as it goes between your fingers okay, like anti-seize, and there's no chunks in there. That's very, very normal. That's just how would I phrase it appropriately? That's appropriate. That's the appropriate wearing down of your gears. Everything, every gearbox is going to have a little bit of in there. So don't panic if you take this out and you see a little bit of smooth on there. If you're opening up a system that has never been opened up in a very, very long time, like 100,000 miles, you will most likely see an excessive amount on there. And again, that's just normal. Put a new gasket on our plug. This is a carbon gasket. It's not a copper gasket. If you use a copper gasket, there's a different torque spec for it. This one goes down to 50 newton meters. The copper one is about 3/4 of that. But if you don't have a torque wrench, you can go snug plus a quarter turn. You'll be okay. It's one of those procedures where you do enough of them, you kind of build up your own little torque spec in your elbow. But, you know, about once a year I get torque wrench happy, and I recalibrate everything and my muscle memory. How's our brake flush doing? Pretty good. All right. The fill plug for the Ascent is on the side just above the axle. It's in the old school position where the dipstick used to be. You can recognize it because there's going to be a breather hose coming off of it. The fill plug on the Ascent transmission, the 6-cylinder engine transmission, all the high torque transmissions is very, very similar to our old school transmissions where they had a dipstick for the front differential. You'll see a breather hose coming out of them. All those transmissions, they call them the high torque transmissions. Uh, their model number for the transmission is the TR690. Now, if you have the TR580, the little grocery getter ones, those actually have a plug just like the fill port on the back of this CVT that you have to identify. So I do recommend that you look that up. You got to get the correct plug because there's another plug really close to it, and if you open up the wrong plug, you're going to be putting diff fluid inside your CVT. I'm going to borrow this shop air line because I only have one air hose right now. My other one is out of commission. So I opened up a second service port just over here on the driver's side of the transmission. That is my spill plug. So as I add fluid, the case is going to fill up and it's going to hit a level and it's going to start spilling out over here. This case will hold about 1.5, 1.6 quarts. And there it is. We're going to go ahead and just let that drip for a second. That's pretty good right there. You don't have to necessarily wait for it to completely stop dripping. Just as long as it starts getting like a slow, thin drip is good enough. And then that little plug there, that's about 20 foot-pounds. Make sure we clean up all our mess. We're ready to transition. We're going to close off this brake caliper. We're going to work our way over to the next brake caliper. Now the bleed procedure on the Subarus is passenger rear, driver rear, passenger front, driver front. Every vehicle can potentially have a different bleed procedure, so you look it up. That's a 17. So while we're flushing this out, let me just give you a fun factoid that I talked about last time for some clarification. So there was a discussion about how long you should let the engine oil drip. Now, there's a lot of people out there who are like, I let it drip all night. Some people are like, I let it go until it stops dripping. I mean, you can drink as many beers as you want and watch that thing drip. That's fine. This little stream that we have right here, this is technically where you would want to just put the plug back in and move on. That's it. Because you're not when you're getting your vehicle serviced at a service center, they're not going to leave your car up on a lift and let it drip for an hour. You let it drain until you get a slow drip like this. We plug it up and then we top it off with oil because your oil change is rated the amount of oil that you get billed out. That's what I should say. At a service center, the amount of oil that you get billed out is based on how much we drain it out in so much amount of time. So there have been rookie mistakes where guys have left a drain plug going overnight. Sorry. They let it go overnight for whatever reason. And then the next morning they go to put the oil in. And our oil reels, they're digital, so they tell you how much oil you put in to the vehicle. So they put in 4.5 quarts. They fire it up, and they want to know why there's no oil on the dipstick. And they come over and they ask her, like, hey, like I just had to put almost 6 quarts of oil in this car. And I explained to them, I says, well, it says, you allowed that plug to stay open so long that now all the oil that was up in the short block and in the cylinder heads of the vehicle is finally drained out and came out. If you do that at home, that's fine. You just need to make sure you have more oil on standby. So that's why I emphasize whenever we do oil changes, you need to check your oil level right after you put oil in, because you never know how much you've technically drained out. This oil change service is rated for 4.5 quarts rounded up, because our system doesn't bill out half quarts, it bills out whole quarts. So you get charged for 5 quarts, and we use that extra to top off your engine. Stop that noise. Who's talking? Hey, Volo. My rear differential had metallic. That heart is in the way. Had a metallic chip on the magnetic plug, like nail shaving after a manicure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I've seen those. I've seen what you're saying. It looks like a little hangnail. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So Volo, if it looked like a nice clean piece that came off, I would, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. It's okay. If it was a uneven chunk, that would be concerning. That means something actually chipped off. But that would just be normal gear wear. Something shaved down. It finally just kind of worked its way off. That smooth where it was just making that rubbing spot. And then eventually it just sheared a little piece of thin off. I say you're fine. I wouldn't be stressed out too much over it. If your rear differential starts making noise, then you would need a new rear differential. Or you would get somebody over there to replace your ring gear and your pinion. But the price of a new differential versus a rebuild is super duper close. I rebuilt, I think it was somebody came in with a 2017 WRX. They insisted on a rebuild. I said okay. And once you added in parts and labor, I told him, I was like, brother, you're like, and I didn't mark up the labor at all. I went by the book. But I was like, dude, seriously, like you're $150 away from getting a brand new one. Why are sometimes rebuild prices so close to new prices? It really just has to go with parts availability. There's more availability of new units than there are of parts to fix things. That's pretty much what it is. If there was more rebuild parts than uh, new assemblies, then rebuild prices would go down. It's just a supply and demand thing. There's no demand for that many rebuilds, so they don't have so many parts on hand. And so that's why the price is a little high. That's why right now, at my level, we're not rebuilding these CVTs in house. Rebuilds are farmed out to another company, and that's just because they have an abundant of rebuild resources on hand, so it's more cost effective. Let's check out our rear diff. Nice, good, clean, smooth. It's got a good pile on there for 60, but he never did a 30 maintenance on it. But now he's got his heavy-duty trailer hitch on here. This car has a tow package, and this person does do a lot of adventuring. So if you if you do max out the tow and the haul specs of your vehicle, you should be increasing your oil change intervals in these equipment. So this particular transmission engine setup on the Ascent, they say it has a 5,000 pound tow rating. And I think tow is a bad word to use. I really wish that we would use the word haul, because um, a lot of people who are very unfamiliar with hooking up trailers to their vehicles and pulling something don't understand that you not only have to take into account the weight that you're pulling behind you, but you also have to take into the weight that you're putting in the vehicle. So when we first came out with this new transmission that could pull 5,000 pounds, we had some people who were maxing out that tow spec. And then they would put 5 people in the car with all their luggage, and they want to know why they burned up their transmission. And I said, well, you pulled a 20-foot trailer, and that 20-foot trailer was 4,900 pounds. And yes, you were technically under your tow rating, but you have to take into account all the mass that you're putting inside your vehicle. So I said, you put 5 people in your vehicle, that's another 1,000 pounds with their luggage. Now, truck people understand that because, truck people grew up with trucks and they understand tow weight, tongue weight, haul weight. They know that if they're pulling a 4,000 pound trailer with gravel on it, they can't put a pallet worth of construction equipment in the truck bed. I mean, when thinking about 2010 starting, we had a lot of people who were getting aftermarket trailer hitches put on their vehicles. And these were like Imprezas and Foresters and Outbacks. They really don't have a tow rating. I mean, yeah, they put it in the manual and they'll say, oh, 900 pounds. So the trailer hitch that comes from the factory here at the dealership It's only it's got a like a class 1 receiver on it, which is that really tiny, annoying, like 1.5 inch square. But all their, I don't think I put a crush ring on that oil pan. I'm gonna check it, guys. You got me distracted. Oh, I did. I gotta put a new one on because I ruined it. So yeah, so people with light duty vehicles, they were going out and putting bigger trailer hitches on thinking that that was going to upgrade their tow rating, and it didn't. It had the reverse effect. Alright, I gotta get a new crush ring because I made a mistake. Well, it didn't really make a mistake. I thought I made a mistake. That was my problem. But we're gonna fix it. Okay. Gonna need an extension to get to that transmission. We are very close to being done, gentlemen and ladies. We're gonna make sure we got the right amount of fluid in our transmission. Get some engine oil in here and fire this baby up. Ooh, yep. Transmission is spilling fluid, so that means it's got fluid in the case, but it hasn't been turned on. We need to cycle the fluid through the transmission and do a recheck. Remember what I said about checking your fluids? We got to cycle. Let's check our chat. How we doing? Who's in here? Rocky Mountain Guy. Welcome to the chat. What are your thoughts about changing oil in the first 1,000 miles of a new engine? I'm glad you brought that up. I actually really do insist that people do that. Whether it's a new car from the factory or it's a rebuild. On all the engines that I rebuild, I tell my customers, I give them a little pamphlet of how they should drive the vehicle, um, what to expect with a new engine rebuild, and that I want them back within 500 to 1,000 miles to get what I call a break-in oil change. Why do manufacturers not recommend break-in oil changes? I think BMW does on their like M5 series, and maybe Mercedes on some of their high-end cars. They'll actually. I heard this through the grapevine from another dealer tech. He said that on their high-performance BMWs and the high-performance Mercedes, that they're technically governed down into like a valet mode almost until they put about 500 miles on the engine, and then they go in for a break-in oil change, and then they unlock the car. I never got confirmation on that, so for right now, that's just a rumor. But yes, let's go back to the point. If you got a brand new vehicle, yeah, I say get an oil change and open up the filter and take a look at it. And if you get a rebuild engine, same thing. get an early oil change, and cut the filter open. Oil our gasket up. And the Subaru oil filters, they actually have instructions for tightening on them, which is pretty cool. And they got little numbers so that way you know how to turn it. So they say like, what does it say? Apply film of engine oil on gasket and tighten one turn after contact gasket. So seat it and then turn it one turn, and you got all your little marks to know how far you turned it. Isn't that nice? So they get on there very snug. So let's go to my story. Just very recently, I acquired a new customer. He bought a used STI with 100,000 miles on it. Very nice looking STI, rally blue. It's a hatch, so that made it a 2013. And look at my engine oil, so I can do two. I can't do two things at once when I talk to you guys. Ascent, 4.8 quarts. So he just said he was getting his first oil change after a rebuild. I says, well, great. And I asked him if I could cut open his filter because that is something you should do. And yeah, we found a lot of scary things inside that filter. The pieces of metal that I questioned, I said, that oddly looks like bearings. And I told him that he should take this filter and go show it to his builder who built the engine. And I says, it could be one of two things. Oh, what I'm putting in is an oil conditioner. It's part of our two-stage engine oil cleaning kits. So we put one in, um, run the engine hot for about 10 minutes, just let it idle. It loosens up all the oil and all the varnish. This goes in and helps with conditioning seals and O-rings. So yeah, we found some interesting metal pieces in there, and I told him, I says, it can be one of two things that is happening right now. I said, one, you got pieces of bearing coming out of your brand new rebuilt engine, because I told him, I says, it honestly looks like the person split the block and put a new crank and bearings in there. It doesn't look like a new short block. Whenever I do STIs, I'm just honest with my customers, and I let them know that, yeah, we can split the case and we can measure new bearings and we can put a new crank in and new piston rings and the whole 9 yards. But just doing it here in the shop at our level is not enough. I says those cases need to be stripped apart, and we need to take it to a machine shop where the bore for the crank can get properly measured and the piston taper can get properly measured. Now, while I do own the tools to measure that, if anything needs to be done to the piston sleeves or the crank bore, well, that's machine work, and we don't have a machine shop on site, so we farm it all out. And once you put in the cost of boring out the crank and fixing a piston sleeve, well, you're in the territory of just buying a short block. So if you're buying a used STI and somebody just stabbed a new crank in it because they had a spun bearing, be mindful that that thing might spin another bearing very soon. I see it a lot. And I feel bad for those people that get, I don't want to say hoodwinked, that's just punching down on them. They don't know any better. You know, they hear somebody say, yeah, yeah, we rebuilt the engine. They honestly think it was done correctly. There are many levels of done correctly. And the problem is, done correctly to the customer, in their mind, means everything is brand new. Everything is checked out. Because the only engine rebuild stuff that you see is probably on the Discovery Channel. And on the Discovery Channel, like, they're doing everything like super duper right, and they're really adamant about it. But then reality hits them, and nope. So those are very sad stories to hear. So in my opinion, like I honestly really like just putting in a new short block. They're more cost effective and they actually come with a really good warranty. Most machine shops, once they rebuild an engine, they won't give you more warranty than the taillights on the horizon of your car. They're like, hey, it started up, it worked. I know of only one machine shop that'll give you 90 days, and that's very generous. 90 days and 10,000 miles? But a remanufactured block, or I'm sorry, a brand new short block, you can get 1 year, 30,000 miles. Gotta make sure my car is level, because I don't have any front tires on the car yet. Alright, we just need just a touch more. We're between the lines, but we're not on the money yet. Which is really important because my gauge here says 4.8. My chart says put in 4.8. But how long did we let that drip, guys? Quite a while. So this thing might need about another third of a quart. Stay. Still wants more. We're almost at the top though. There we go, right on the money. How much did we put in? We put in 5.8 quarts of real oil plus 11 ounces from that supplement. Oh, we got the engine running. As soon as the RPMs settle down, we're going to check that transmission fluid and make sure it's topped off correctly. Yeah. I thought I heard something. I'm going to have to talk to the advisor on Monday. So I started the car up and I heard what sounded like a little bit of an exhaust leak. And I can feel it with my hand. It's pretty bad. That sucks. More work. Let's just check and make sure they're torqued correctly. I've heard of these bolts wandering. Everything's tight right here. That needed about a quarter turn. That one's good now. Torquing exhaust is very, very important. We should never just ugga-dugga it down because you can warp the mating surfaces. I'm going to listen to my exhaust. I got my mechanical stethoscope here. I'm going to take this part off. So I'll put this around the exhaust gasket and it'll sound like somebody's blowing in my ears. And if you hear a very, very constant rush of air, you're probably just hearing the fan from the engine. What an exhaust leak is going to sound like through this is a little puff, 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 as that cylinder pushes out the exhaust gas. Check over here by the turbo. There it is. I can hear it. Let's see if I can. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear it through the mic. I'm going to hold it up to the microphone. Where's my boom? There's my boom. There's a light little tick right there. So that passenger side exhaust manifold gasket is no good. Needs a new one. We'll get it fixed on Monday. To do the exhaust manifold gaskets on this is very time consuming if you do it by the book, because the book has you drop the entire exhaust manifold assembly with the turbo, and there's oil lines and coolant lines hooked up to it. That's annoying. I mean, for me with a lift, that can take 2 hours. But I'll get you over here. Let it go. We can do my favorite thing. I call it cheating death. All right. So we'll undo the 3 bolts there and the 3 bolts there, and we're going to let the exhaust just come down. It'll probably come down about 5 millimeters, but you still won't be able to slip a gasket in, right? Because the studs are blocking you. Well, I got a tool that can grab those studs and remove them without messing up the threads. So I'll just pull the studs out, and then I'll just very gingerly slide an exhaust gasket in there, and then put my studs back in. Stud removers are pretty cheap. You can get like a whole set for like $40. Obviously, if the studs don't want to come out, then you're stuck removing the entire assembly. And if you mess up the threads, then you are buying new studs. But thus far, I have been very successful at cheating death. All right, so we're not dripping fluid out of the transmission, which means we need to add some. I have some on standby just for this. The fluid that we are going to be putting in is the Subaru HTLV. That stands for high torque, low viscosity. I know HT stands for high torque, but I'm guessing about the LV. Let's see if my penis pump here wants to cooperate, as I think it's got a bad seal. I need to get the rebuild kit and put new seals in it. I've had it for about 5 years, so it's done its job. And with the transmission running, we're going to inject our fluid until it spills out. Now, if you're filling one of these up and you did a drain and fill on your own, and it starts dripping out, but you see tiny, tiny bubbles, I call those champagne bubbles. That's okay, no damage is done. It just means that your oil pump is agitating the fluid and creating bubbles because it sucked up air. All you really need to do is just turn the car off and let it sit for about 10 to 30 minutes. So go have a couple beers, come back, turn it on, and try again. And repeat that process until the tiny bubbles go away. All right, now she's dripping. You got to reach around this extremely hot exhaust and plug it up. And I follow the same thing as last time of how long do you let it drip? Well, I say once you get a stream coming out and it settles down a little bit, it's good. I never let them drip dry because this transmission kind of sinks to the rear a little bit. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, you picking on my products? Well, I'm only repeating what the brochure says, sir. So don't hold me accountable to it. I know their top engine cleaner that we sell here is really, really good, and it does a great job. It's not a silver bullet, so if you've never gotten a top engine cleaner in 120,000 miles, you really should just look at getting a walnut blast. But if you start getting it early on at about 30,000 miles of your vehicle life, and then you get it every 30, it does a really good job at keeping down the carbon. So I'll scrub through chat and make sure we didn't leave any questions hanging, guys. Uh, but it is 3:45 Central Standard Time. Okay, we got Rocky Mountain guy. Glad to hear confirmation. I usually do not. Nobody does any. Okay, what do we? Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. We were talking about the filter. All right, yeah. I'm glad I was able to talk to you about that filter. Uh, there's still a lot of old man stuff out there from like the 50s and 60s that people are still abiding by, and with new modern cars, we don't have to follow those exact specifications. One of them, those urban legends that still exist, is letting your car sit and warm up. Um, Honestly, your car wants to be driven as soon as it starts, with respect to outside temperature. Obviously, if it is freezing cold, if it's below 30, then letting your car warm up for about 5 minutes is really good. But there's a lot of people who still will let their car idle for 20, 30 minutes before they drive it. And all you're doing is just wasting gasoline, in my opinion. If you have a modified vehicle, that's a totally different discussion. But if you just bought a car off of a dealer lot, honestly, you can start these cars and just drive them. They are programmed to run the engine retarded, to warm up the engine super fast, get the catalytic hot super fast, get the coolant hot super fast, and get you the hotter everything gets faster, the better fuel economy you get, and the more power you get. If you're running a modified vehicle, well, then there's different standards that you follow for that particular vehicle. I know when I was modifying my personal vehicle, it's blown up. I don't have it anymore. But I was running a really heavyweight oil in it. Um, I had the factory oil is 530 synthetic, but due to the modifications, I increased it to a 540 diesel oil. It's called Rotunda T6. Now, that oil, when it's cold, is very, very, very thick. So, to keep my components from getting oil starved at engine startup, I kept a oil pan warmer on there. So every day I would have to plug it in and keep my oil at about 100 degrees. So that way when I did an engine start, I was good. And even then, before I started it, I would do a clear flood mode on the engine, and I would just let the starter prime the engine. It was a really annoying life to live, but that's what kept my crank from getting oil starved at startup, and I think that is a a big thing that's happening with our STI owners is the number one failure on STIs is the crank starvation, and you get that one of two ways. You get that at engine start, and you get that at high RPMs. So if you have an STI and you're doing time attacks on the race strip at like trying to hit quarter mile times, or you're just opening up to 100 miles an hour and you're racing people on the roads, which by the way is really dangerous, you got to keep in mind the longer you run that engine at redline and at high RPMs, that's more oil you're sucking out of the pan, and there's oil stuck in the cylinder heads and it's not retreating fast enough. And so you get oil starvation. It's a really classic problem on STIs. People think the STIs, they're garbage, but it really just comes down to bad ownership. They're running the engines too hot too long, and they're oil starving it from running at high RPMs. They track them, they race them. So if you're interested in an STI and you want to do some enthusiastic driving, the first thing I recommend is buying the Killer Bee oil pan and oil pickup tube, because it's going to allow you to carry about an extra quart and a half of oil. So that way when you do run a really long high RPM drag, let's say you're going to just balls out at 100 miles an hour for about 10 seconds, you're still going to have oil here to pick up. That's just my thoughts. I learned my lessons the expensive way. We got Saul. Hey, Saul, new to the channel. Hey, that's great, man. Newcomers always welcome. I love how you teach. I got covered up here. I love how you teach for the purpose of passing knowledge on. God bless you. Hey, you're very welcome, sir. When I got into this industry and I took it as a career change and I had to learn it, trying to get somebody to give me on-the-job training was extremely difficult, because that technician, the way that technicians get paid, let me just tell a small little tangent here. The way that technicians get paid is they're paid by the job. That's called flag. So if they have to stop working and walk over to a junior tech stall and teach them how to do something, that tech isn't getting paid. So if somebody helps you, or if somebody's helping you in a garage, you better be very grateful that they're giving up their time to help you, because they're technically losing money. And a lot of shops do not pay technicians for helping other technicians. They just expect you all to be buddy-buddy and get along and help each other out whenever somebody needs help. And well, that only goes so far. You know, it's just like today. I had to shun off another tech. He was trying to ask me for some help, and I felt really bad that I couldn't walk over and help him with it, because I'm pointing. I'm like, dude, I was supposed to have this done last night, and I had to come in on my day off. I don't want to stop and help you. I just want to get this done. I feel horrible about doing that kind of stuff. I want to help everybody, but that's the cruel double-edged side of the sword of the automotive industry. So I vowed as soon as I got good enough, I was never going to let somebody fall behind like that. I wanted to make sure they had all the information possible to them. Because if everybody had the same skill set as the best guy in the shop, then everybody would make money, because we wouldn't be slowing each other down by asking questions. So why hoard the knowledge? Right? I mean, if I teach somebody how to fix an engine and he's a low-level tech, he comes over and he's like, hey, I want to learn how to fix an engine. I'll be like, yeah, great, grab some tools, jump on in, you can help me with this one. He's not going to take my work on the next job, because I know that guy doesn't have any tools. I mean, one of the things that I had to do to get good at where I'm at is every day I clocked out, I was done. I was just a low-level tech. All I did was oil changes and bolt-on work. I did brakes and struts and tune-ups. Better put these covers on before I forget. You guys got me on a tangent. But what I did to get when my job was done, I would walk over to the mainline guy, and I would tell him, be like, hey, if you guys are going to stay late, I'll hold the flashlight if I can watch and learn. And they were very grateful that I was willing to give up my personal time to help them out. Now, did they get did I get paid for that? No. But I knew that staying late and helping them out was in turn they were giving me knowledge. And man, did I stay late a lot of nights. I'm just cleaning up any of the brake juice that came out when I opened these up. And you don't see a lot of people doing that now. You know, they want to go home, they want to watch their YouTube, play their video games, and I respect that. You got your personal life, go do your thing. But in this skilled labor, in a job of skilled labor, it requires personal devotion, to be honest. Like a lot of my work that I do nowadays, my heavy line comes from doing comes from doing diagnostics. And I'm not making money off the diagnostics, but I'm making money from describing to the customer what's wrong with their car, what they need repair. How, yes, sir, how can I help you?
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir, how can I help you?
Volkswagen. So this key remote works. This key works, but the remote doesn't work. Is there any way to program it?
Yeah, let's get on. Yeah, it'd be real simple. Most likely all they did was just put the immobilizer on, but they didn't go into the BIU and register this. It's two different things. So let me just get a scan tool. We'll jump right on it, okay? It's this one, right?
Really? Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Anything for you. I'll meet you over by the car. I'd bring you along with this one, but you're just going to have to listen along. Again, unless that person has said that they want to be on a video or a stream, I respect their privacy.
I like your boots, bro.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Get the laptop hooked up. Get our OBD2. This car smells nice.
Yeah, you're telling me.
My laptop doesn't want to turn on for a second. There we go. Alright, so let's go into the car right now and see if it'll read the VIN. Does not read the VIN. That's not good. Okay. Let me just make sure my J-box here is working correctly. Alright, so that's a test of the USB cable. USB cable wakes up the J-box. So let's plug it back in here. Read VIN. Okay, let's see if we can get into it by hand. This is a what year? 21. 2021. All right. All right. So let's check our ECU first. If somebody replaced the ECU and they didn't burn the VIN in, that could be a problem. Cannot communicate with ECU. Okay. Hang on a tick. I got a feeling I know what happened here. F11 setup.
What's your name, man?
My name's Joe.
Joe. Scott Day.
How you
Great to
doing,
meet you.
Scott?
How long you been here?
Been here since 2016.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, came over from the other location. You know what? Let's just try another tool and hope we get lucky.
No.
We, oh, baby, you got me so distracted. I made a rookie mistake. How about we? How about we turn the car on?
Okay. That's the by the
Oh,
by
what
the
a
remote. I mean, by the remote, right?
that's yeah. This is the one I got to program.
Yes, sir.
I bet you we communicate with this thing right now. Now that we got the car on. There it is. Ooh, someone's been in this before. All right, we're gonna go to each system. And I want the, I think the body controller on this model has my keys. Work support. This is not a push button. None of this is in alphabetical order. Transmission, tire, airbag, power, keyless, push button, eyesight, power rear gate, immobilizer, blind spot, power seat, telematics, power, reverse, central gateway, vent door, driver, keyless entry, keyless ID registration. Okay, select the ignition switch to off and remove the key before registering. Press yes. Number key register 2. Press the lock and unlock button within 3 minutes.
Yeah, it took it in my hand, but I got to replace the battery.
Just make sure the battery isn't upside down. This is an aftermarket fob.
You got me. Yeah, maybe.
Well, quickest way to check it is just compare it to this one. Okay, I see blue. It's blue. All right. I just never seen the blue back on these. They're usually black.
Oh, really?
Maybe they just changed out the plastic over the years. Mm, CR1620. It's upside down. Plus side.
Okay.
Okay. Try it again. Keyless ID registration. Set the ignition switch to off. Press yes. And press the lock and unlock it. 3 keys are registered.
Look at that.
All right. And so that part, that's for the door locks. Well, let's make
The
sure.
ignition was working.
Okay, so they got the immobilizer working too. Good, because there's a chip in here that's RFID.
Yes.
You're good to go, sir. You have a good weekend.
Hey, Joe. You don't work for free. Thank you, buddy.
Bless you,
Good
sir.
luck for you.
Bless you. Tell Bob I said hi.
I'll do it.
What a nice chap. I got a tip. Oh, okay, Saul, what's going on, Saul? Saul says, oh, you got a few things here. Saul says it's hard, yes, but it's the effort that counts. At least you try to help whenever you can. Keep working, bro. We can hear you. It sucks whenever I have to give up my time to help young guy get into the business, but it's all worth it whenever. Yes, exactly it is. It's like raising a child when you have an apprentice and you train them off and you watch them grow, and then it just makes you feel so good when they have that like aha moment, like I figured it out. That's what excites me is when apprentice is finally just it clicked for them and they start diagnosing and they start um, understanding how things are done. That's what makes it all worth it to me. So a success story is what keeps me going with this, and that's why I run the channel. Saul says, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but what do you think about the Cybertruck in 10 years? Will they still be looking like new? That's a good question. I know that those lithium batteries, they do got a shelf life. They can only take so many charges. They can only be depleted and recharged so many times. And the best way to extend the life of your electric, if you have a full electric vehicle, the best way to extend the shelf life is to trickle charge them and stay away from the rapid chargers. The rapid chargers, the batteries get really, really hot. The lithium cells get really hot during a rapid charge, and that depletes their shelf life. I don't have a specific percentage to it, but that is what they teach you in electric vehicle training. So when if you can plug your electric car in on a trickle charger every night, that's better than depleting it all the way and then throwing it on a rapid charger for 2 hours and driving it again. Now, obviously, if you're driving a long distance and you have to use a rapid charger, your system is set up to rapid charge. And yeah, it's good for those onesie twosies. But if that's all you're doing, you can definitely expect the shelf life of your EV battery to be depleted a lot faster. That's just from training. As far as the electric vehicles, the Teslas are all over my area. They're a very popular car. They're very affordable to get into, and people love them. Other manufacturers are following suit with electric cars, and full electric cars, the Teslas have been on the road for a long time. I think they got a really, really good design. They have their idiosyncrasies, just like any manufacturer, and the media picks on them. But if that's all they got, then it's still a pretty good, solid car. Now, there was a lot of laughing at the Cybertruck, getting stuck in that big Chicago frost that they had. And yeah, if you hit sub-zero temperatures, those electric batteries, they're actually going to kick on. The vehicle's going to turn your electric battery on to draw current through the cells to keep them warm because they don't like being cold. So unfortunately, a lot of those people, they didn't have fully charged vehicles, and the batteries used up the last bit of their shelf life to keep the battery pack alive so the person can start it. There was some other things that went on, and I didn't read too much into it, but all I took away from it was you get an Arctic blast hit, your electric vehicle is not going to work so well. So up north, they got a reality check of what can happen during when you get a hard Arctic blast. Solutions to that, if you have it available, would be a garage, but unfortunately, housing is getting it really expensive, and people are living in condos and apartment complexes, and you don't have a warm place to put your vehicle if it is an electric vehicle. So the only other answer would be a carport. It would have to be a enclosed, covered carport that could keep the temperature above freezing, at least at 40 degrees, so that these vehicles can start up. But if somebody gave me an electric vehicle, I'd drive it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm not going to invest in one because I invest money in tools. I drive really old, crappy cars. But thanks for asking that question. Happy to answer it for you. And if you're in the market for a full EV car, there are a lot of really good options out there. So, with that said, folks, I'm going to go home and see the family and enjoy my weekend. I want you to enjoy your weekend. And I want to thank you for staying for the entirety of the stream. We had a really good attendance rate of 6 people here today, and we had a very interactive chat. Y'all take care now, okay? I hope to see you on another stream. I don't know when it'll be, but if I find something to fix, you can bet I'm going to turn the camera on just for you guys. All the streams are going to be available up on demand, so you can reference them later and you can skim through. You can see what's going on. My email, you can find it on my main channel page in the About section. You can send me an email. If you have some trouble codes that you scanned, giving me a screenshot is very, very beneficial. If you say I got a Subaru with a P0300, give me some more specifics, like the mileage, maybe what kind of Subaru it is, and what year it was made. So, take care, folks.